Hi, this is Fake Zappa, also known as Jason T. Ingram, and I'm coming to you. This is my first week in Florida. And so I'm doing a mini series here about disadvantaged creative people or folks that have a need, have a story to tell, something to contribute that deserves to be compensated, something to contribute that they're even trying to give for free, and what it's like to be screaming behind a huge concrete wall where they can't see you, they can't hear you, and no matter what you do, they've blocked you out. The weird thing about being invisible is people can see you, but they really don't see you. I think an example of that would be, let's say you're dating. And I get this a lot because, I travel. It'd be really great to be able to get another boyfriend. And so here it is. I just reached this week 25 states. And that's just since I've been doing RVs for less than 3 years. And all but 3 of that has just been in the last year or so. So that's a lot of places. And I have chatted with a lot of guys who there's some mutual interest there. And I think that, there's a possibility that I could have settled down at one of these places and maybe had a relationship, or maybe traveled back and forth and had kind of a long distance thing, or maybe find somebody who was wanting to be unplugged and to come with me. Or my hope is to find preferably a man, but I'm really tired of guys. But, most of my chemistry, roughly 90% of my interests are gay. And so I'm like, okay, I have to deal with dudes. I like the way they smell, but other than that, there's a lot of things about dudes that I'm having a lot of trouble with, especially, and this is interesting, being an old white guy is the biggest trouble that I come across in my travels are old white men. And you look at our last couple presidents, you look at the biggest, most powerful troublemakers that are not really that interested in making peace and making compromises and really sympathizing with the underprivileged in a way that's significant, not tokens, is old white men or folks that have 2 out of 3 of those characteristics. So I just spent over 4 months in Texas, and I tell you what, there and Louisiana, and then up in the Dakotas, I was like, holy shit, there are some of the meanest, most selfish, most power-hungry old white men that I have ever seen in my life as you go down this sort of prairie corridor. And as much as I enjoy being in red states, it's just it's refreshing compared to all the time I spent in blue states. Just that there are definitely issues, and it's the same thing. It's just that it is old white men, whether they say that they are for the underprivileged or not. They want to take over this country, and they're going to do it however way they can get away with. And in the meantime, they're going to have these tokens where it's like, especially left-wing folks, like I'm going to handpick some brown and black and yellow and red people and make me look good, and some people in wheelchairs and all this kind of stuff. However, really, when it comes to it, though, you have a real, genuine young black man from the ghetto, from the hood, from the projects, doing his dance and hip hop and rap and his dialect and everything. And he goes to a Unitarian church, or he goes to a gay community center, or he goes to a mental health drop-in center, and they're scared of him. But, they say, well, we like this black guy because, he's in college or whatever. And so that's what I've noticed about the left wing. Now, of course, the right wing, they're the ones that are getting the worst media exposure these days. And some of it's true, and some of it is really not typical of right-wing America. But if there's one thing I've noticed, though, when it comes to the entertainment industry, I have talked to a handful of Trump supporters that are in the entertainment industry. And most of them are definitely part of the Fuck Trump Club. And I've noticed the same behaviors, is that they have influence. They have power. They don't admit how much power and influence they have. They even resent it sometimes. They're in denial of it, and they refuse. They refuse to share it. They refuse to make visible the people that are invisible, who need to be seen. Now, I think everybody needs to be seen in certain respects. What happens, my theory of the terrible twos. Now, I was an interesting terrible two. I had very, very unusual characteristics for a 2-year-old. I would ruin chairs because I would hit my head on these chairs, and I would go back and forth, and I would suck my thumb till it made my teeth stick out, and I almost had to get braces and stuff. And then by the time I was 3 years old, I was having these violent rage outbreaks where I nearly threw this chair down this stairs, and I nearly broke a window out or something. And from then on, and, you know, being raised by a very powerful, influential hypnotist or hypnotherapist was something nobody ever asked me about. There's certain things about invisible people that, if their lives are sensational, there's really nothing they can do to change their history. But when they start talking and they're saying, you know, I experienced this and that, and it's like, yeah, but you're invisible. Nobody's going to believe you. What's the point? Well, the thing is that it happened. It actually happened. And so having a very unsafe, abusive environment where my needs weren't met. And I've recently started putting my story out on my website, The Real Fake Zappa Story. I also am publishing the fake Zappa story at fakezappa.com because folks are more interested in fake stuff than real stuff these days. Okay, I'll give them something fake, especially Frank Zappa fans, who are the most plastic people that I have met in the world of rock and roll when it comes to folks that think they're into something genuine. And so, yay, Frank Zappa fans, believe it or not, you are plastic people. Like the opening of the 1967 album, absolutely free by the Mothers of Invention. So, anyways, what is it to be invisible? It is to have a need and not have it met. To have something to contribute and not be able to. For instance, there's little things like that. Just offering to buy dinner to somebody. Offering to make dinner for somebody. And the only people that allow me to do that are those who are below my social status. We're talking about dirt poor, homeless, drifter type people. And for me, I'm not dirt poor. I'm a drifter, but I'm definitely not homeless. But folks that are my peers and folks that are influential and folks that are whatever and stuff like that, my money, my time, my food, my efforts, even stuff like that anybody could really offer if they have it, is not valuable to them. And then I find out that they don't treat everybody like that. And it's really sad when I do find these things out, too. And that's pretty common as well. However, when it comes to somebody who has something big to contribute, if they have a big idea, if they have a big project, if they have a big gift, a big talent, and nobody will even consider it because there's an energy that invisible people put out. And especially abuse victims, because there are certain types of abuse victims who undergo a lot of psychological stuff that really makes this thing around them that either makes them misunderstood or makes them hidden, or basically they're not seen, they're not heard, they're not understood. And the big thing that abusers will say to a child or even to an adult who is in a situation like that is, don't tell. Well, what happens if they do tell? Nobody will listen because there's this whole thing that's just imposed to that child. And that often ends up in their adult life is you don't tell anybody what really happens. This didn't happen. I'm going to erase this from my memory. I'm going to erase it from your memory. And I'm going to tell everybody that this thing is erased from history. And I'm going to make the victim the abuser and the abuser the victim. And everybody is going to believe that. That's one of the reasons why invisible people aren't even considered. They're not heard. They're not acknowledged because they grew up in an environment where that kid is crazy. He said this happened, but you talk to his parents and you just realize, oh, the kid's crazy because the parents are really good at talking. And they have an amazing, spotless reputation, and they're powerful, they're influential, and it's really weird that those folks, especially the highly educated folks, some of the folks who have backgrounds with, here's the thing, is that a lot of these abusers are folks who were victims themselves. And in order to cope with this, they've managed to, for lack of a better term, fuck with their heads, change history, whatever, and then fuck with other people's heads and focus a whole bunch of energy in getting themselves to be seen and heard, and all whatever it is, whether it's true or whether they've made it up in their head, they managed to get people to believe their story and all that kind of stuff. So here's the weird thing about being invisible is that if I'm involved trying to resolve a conflict and I have solid evidence, and I've learned this the hard way for several years. I've even dealt with, legal people, law enforcement people. Here's solid evidence, and I'm not heard. And it's just really weird being branded as, okay, you're a follower, we don't see you, we don't hear you. And especially though, this was solidified, because this wasn't always the case in my life. There were some times when I was younger where I was in a situation where I happened to be empowered, but I was following this really strict biblical ideology in that world and stuff. And so they're very selective of who they give their power to. However, I know what that's like, and I know what it's like to not have that for most of my life. So that's why I can say a lot of these things, because I know what it's like to have it and to lose it and to not have it growing up, and then to be invisible, and then suddenly I'm visible, I'm recognized, and suddenly poof, I'm invisible. But the biggest thing is, being institutionalized for either mental health problems or incarcerated. You get treated the same way if you come out of a mental hospital than if you came out of jail, if you came out of prison, if you came from a drug addiction thing and you come out of that, or a sex addiction thing, whether you were a sex addict or not, you come out of that, it's the same as coming out of a mental institution, even a crisis respite center or something like that. You're basically stripped of your power, your reputation. You're a follower, and you're going to have to get lucky or privileged in order to ever be seen or heard again. And what Social Security disability has done to me, and has done to a lot of people, is sort of like the government is saying, we're going to help you, we're going to give you just enough money so you don't die, we're going to give you just enough care to get you some pills and maybe a few follow-up things every month or two if you're lucky enough to have that. And if you're really lucky, you might get a caseworker, which I haven't had for almost 25 years, or more than that, I think. And then we don't want to think about you. We don't want to see you. We're going to sweep you under the carpet, and we're just going to keep giving you money until you die, basically. But when it comes to any kind of creativity, they call it art therapy, not a career. So I didn't realize that was some of the baggage I was going to get when I wasn't able to work, because I was not only suffering from recent trauma, and of course a lot of mental health issues, I was also suffering from a lot of physical chronic problems as a result of all that stress, all that trauma, unsafe environments, all that recent stuff. And it's taken me 15 years. I'm still not really functional enough to do this stuff. It's just that if they would have told me ahead of time what my life was going to be like, I would have liked to make an informed decision to say, you know what, if I can't work anymore, that's one thing. But is it really worth disappearing? Is it really worth not being seen, heard, acknowledged, considered, or understood? Anyways, more stuff at fakezappa.com, and I will talk more about some recent stuff here, which I will get to, and try not to get too grumpy about it.